As Lao Tzu says, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. It's true. And now we have with us a speaker who is a pioneer in the field of additive manufacturing. He's none other than Professor P.M. Pandey, sir. He is the professor in the Department of Mechanical Engineering, Indian Institute of Technology, Delhi. And now we are proud to say that he's currently working with us as a director at BIT Jhansi. He joined as an assistant professor in the Department of Mechanical Engineering at IIT Delhi in 2004. Prior to joining at IIT Delhi, he was working with HBTI Kanpur, and he earned his doctorate and master's in mechanical engineering from Indian Institute of Technology, Delhi, and he did his BTech from HBTI Kanpur 1993. His research concentrated mostly on additive manufacturing, 3D printing and tooling, non-traditional machining and finishing, FEA of manufacturing processes, biomedical application of 3D printing, and he has also worked on biomedical applications too. Interestingly, Professor Pandey sir has guided 36 PhD theses, and he has also published about 185 research papers in referred journals, 6 in popular magazines. And he also delivered keynote lectures in different conferences, workshops, universities, and above it all, he has got around 22 patents as of now, and he's still working. His awards and recognition given by the government and various people were, he has got 5 awards, Gandhian Young Technological Innovation Awards, 1 in 2013, 2 in 2015, 1 in 2017, and 1 in 2018. And not only that, he has got an outstanding research award by Additive Manufacturing Society of India 2015, and he was invited for a talk at 20th European Forum on Additive Manufacturing that was held in Paris 2015. And he got J.M. Mahajan Award of Outstanding Faculty in the year 2012 by the Department of Mechanical Engineering, IIT Delhi. I'll not take much of your time, sir. It's so much is there to speak, but still we have come here, we have joined here to hear his wise words. Thank you, sir, for joining us in spite of your health issues. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us. Over to you, sir. PM Pandey, sir.
So, thank you for your very generous introduction, and thank you, Dr. Arun Pandey, for giving me this opportunity to address the participants in this FDP that is about, I think, manufacturing processes, correct? So, my area of expertise has been just now told, that is mainly on additive manufacturing, which we nowadays also call as 3D printing. But other than that, also I have worked on different areas. And today, what I have decided that I will talk about the smart manufacturing, that is Industry 4.0, and then how really the Industry 4.0 is connected with additive manufacturing. That is, additive manufacturing is one of the important tools for smart manufacturing that I would like to discuss. So I'll take around 45 minutes to complete all these things, and if the time will be there, then I would also like to highlight some important research issues which have been taken by my recent PhD students at IIT Delhi. So let me start. I'll share my screen now. Yeah, so the screen is shared now, I think.
It's visible, sir.
Yeah, so this is the slide. Is it okay?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so I'll talk about the smart manufacturing, which is also known as Industry 4.0. That is the fourth industrial revolution. So, as we know that there has been number of evolutions, number of industrial revolutions, and the first industrial revolution took place because of the mechanization. The mechanization means when this James Watt introduced his steam engine. So the steam engine, like what used to happen, that earlier the primitive machines were driven by either the cattle power or by the human muscular power. So this particular invention of steam engine, that has brought the concept of mechanization, where the human muscular power or the cattle's power that was substituted by the steam power. So water power or steam power, correct? Now at the same time, various new manufacturing methods were developed, and it was also the time when the iron ore metallurgy was fully developed, and it was the time when there was a lot of so many steels were produced because of the accurate iron metallurgy. Then there were machine tools which were driven by the water or steam power, and there were steam factories because the steam engine was developed, so steam factories also developed. So all these things together actually brought the first industrial revolution, and this first industrial revolution actually took place at the end of the 18th century, correct? So the key word which we have to actually remember is the mechanization. Mechanization means when the human muscular energy or the water or the cattle's energy that was substituted by the steam or water power. Later on, after around, say, I'll say around 100 years, that was the beginning of the 20th century, it was the concept of mass production to continuous assembly line concept that came into the picture. So this has actually came into the existence because of the technological electrification, production line mass production concept. And then other than this, there were a few more things like engines, turbines, broad adoption of telegraph, gas, water supply. They also played a vital role in bringing the second industrial revolution. So second industrial revolution, which took place at the beginning of 20th century, that happened because of the mass continuous line production. Now the third industrial revolution, that happened around 1970s or so, correct? So if you really see, that happens in the beginning of 1970th, correct? So here it was the time when microprocessor was developed. So it was the time when actually the concept of electronics came into the picture, when people developed, engineers developed microprocessor, and this microprocessor led to the development of computers, a little bit of internet or intranet, and then LAN, digital manufacturing. So like the concept of numerically controlled machine tools or the numerical control of machine tools, that was getting developed. Primitive robotics, programming logic controllers. So these things like the low cost automation, that has brought the third industrial revolution. Now in the third industrial revolution, basically the idea was that we have to see about Vishal, कोई खास बात? हाँ जी, हाँ सुप्रा का, हाँ मैं एक लेक्चर में हूँ, फिर आपको फोन करता हूँ, ठीक? So this digital automation. So actually, if you want to see the key point of this third industrial revolution is substitution of human mental effort. So actually, when this microprocessor was developed, computers were developed, numerically controlled machine tools were developed, what exactly has been done? That programming has actually, the soft skills came into the picture. So this has actually reduced the human mental effort. So third industrial revolution key point is that substitution of human mental effort. Then today we are talking about the industry 4.0, that is the smart manufacturing. So this smart manufacturing is because of the convergence of information technology and various other advanced computational tools in order to assist the manufacturing. So those tools may be the industrial IoT, autonomous machines, advanced robotics, big data analytics, Internet of Things. Then we have artificial intelligence and machine learning, and of course the concept of cyber physical system in general, which is actually assisting the manufacturing. So if you see along with the timeline and the level of complexity which was increased with the time over this level of complexity, so you can see in the very beginning, at the end of 18th century, we had first industrial revolution. Then here you can see this level of complexity, so that is increasing. Then we have at the beginning of 20th century, that is around 1900 or so, we had second industrial revolution, where we had the concept of continuous production. And then when the microprocessor was developed, we had at the beginning of 1970s or so, we had this industrial revolution where the electronics was used along with the manufacturing. And today we talk about the fourth industrial revolution, that is smart manufacturing or industry 4.0, which is based on the cyber physical system. So I'll focus mainly on the fourth one, that is the industry 4.0. So in the very beginning, we have to understand the concept of cyber physical system, because this is the backbone of the industry 4.0. So in order to understand the cyber physical system, what we have to see that at the core of this cyber physical system, we have information, and this is a digital information. So you might have heard sometimes our Prime Minister saying that the nation which has more information, more digital information is the most successful nation. So that's what actually the concept which he was speaking about, that is the information, correct? So today it is the time when most of the information has been digitized, or rather whatever knowledge generation that is taking place, that is to be coded or to be written or to be stored in the form of digital information. So there's a huge digital information. Now when you want to produce a component, or you want to produce an assembly or sub-assembly, you need to actually find out appropriate information. Like there's a huge information. For example, you can understand that if you Google a particular topic, you get so many web pages. Sometimes you get more than 5,000 web pages. Now among those 5,000 web pages, which information is most suitable to you, that you have to find out, correct? So that takes a lot of time actually. It's not a simple task that you can read all 5,000 pages and dig out the most appropriate information for your purpose. So here you actually need some computational tools. So these computational tools are needed, which may require data mining, big data analytics, optimization tools, artificial intelligence, machine learning algorithms, in order to actually dig out the most appropriate and optimum information for manufacturing a particular assembly or a component as far as the manufacturing or the smart manufacturing is concerned. Okay, then this information is then to be communicated, because it is the time of communication. We're talking about nowadays 5G communication, correct? So this huge chunk of information from where we have derived the most optimum information for our purpose, this is to be communicated to the various locations, correct? Because our machines which are actually producing, which are actually fabricating, they may be physically present at different locations. And then using this information, this communication of the most optimum data, these machines are to be controlled, correct? So these are the physical entities, these are the physical machines and the raw materials that is to be controlled and acted accordingly, so that you are able to produce the component in the environment of smart manufacturing. So cyber physical system is a system of collaborating computational elements controlling physical entities. CPS are physical and engineered systems whose operations are monitored, coordinated, controlled, and integrated by a computing and communicating core. They allow us to add capabilities to physical systems by merging computing and communication with physical processes. So this is how we can define a cyber physical system. At the same time, I have tried my best to explain the concept of cyber physical system. Okay, now if you try to see the today's most modern concept, or today's, I'll say, existing concept in various modern Indian, we can say, industries, which are automobile industries, for example, which are actually using the concept of mass production, or continuous assembly line production, in order to produce the various automobiles. Like if you visit any automobile company nearby, that is maybe in this our NCR region, you will find, and I believe that many of you might have already seen that an assembly line. So like an engine of an automobile, or maybe gearbox in an automobile, or later the entire automobile, like entire car, as the example has been shown, that is being assembled on a rigidly sequenced car manufacture on a production line. So if you really have seen it, you can appreciate that basically there may be hundreds of stations, like workstation 1, 2, and it may be go up to 100. And at a particular station, there may be 1 or 2 workers, or maybe the skilled, semi-skilled kind of, I'll say, technicians who are performing unique kind of job. Like somebody may be putting the windscreen on the car body. So his job is only to put the windscreen, and then the entire thing will move ahead. The next step will be done by the other set of semi-skilled operators or technicians. So this is how the car assembly takes place. And if you're doing like this, at the end of the day, you will be able to actually produce maybe 200 cars a day, or if it is a bike, you may be able to produce maybe 1,000 bikes a day. So that's the kind of production system we are having nowadays. Now there's another important point that is to be noted here, that these workstations are rigid. Like here, the word which has been used is the rigid warm water. इसमें थोड़ा गर्म पानी डाल दीजिए. It's the rigid sequenced car manufacturing. So these systems are actually rigid. Now what do you mean by rigid here? Like the assembly line is a rigid assembly line. Like if it is an assembly line, the same product. If I want to change from one model of car to another model of car, there may be a lot of similarity. Even though you will find that it is not possible to do, you have to design a new assembly line. Now in 2019, in the month of, I believe, March, I had an opportunity to visit Germany, and I visited Mercedes company and the Porsche car company, these two companies, and also I visited 5-6 companies, but these two automobile companies I visited. Now there I also observed these kinds of assembly lines, but what I observed is that they have brought in some sort of flexibility. They are not that rigid, because like in Porsche company, I could see that different models of similar cars, they can be done on one assembly line. So means they have introduced some amount of or some degree of flexibility on these, assembly lines. Now, but today we are talking of something which is much more advanced as compared to what they have tried to achieve. Correct? So what they have tried to achieve is the tomorrow's factory, or maybe the concept which we are talking today is the concept of smart manufacturing. So this concept of smart manufacturing says that it has to be decoupled. It has to be fully flexible, because it was not flexible at all. Correct? The last one which we talked about is not it is not flexible at all. Like if you see this particular system, it is rigidly sequenced. So here what we are talking about flexible, and it has to be like the system which I observed in Germany, that is not fully flexible. But what we are talking about today is fully flexible. And we are talking about highly integrated manufacturing system. So here the idea is that these workstations they may be the workstations, even they may be the physical machines at different locations, and the optimum data or which has been derived or which has been chosen from the set of huge data that is being communicated to the various locations where these workstations or the machines are physically located, and these machines are also enabled with the communication, like they can communicate with each other or with one another, and they have modules built that they can take their own decisions, because when the data will come and these systems will start operating, there may be situations that some decisions have to be taken, and these machines, because they are enabled with some sort of communication, and there's a protocol for this communication, which is nowadays the new 3D printers or new machines, digital machines, manufacturing machines which you obtain or which you purchase, they are actually Industry 4.0 enabled. So for Industry 4.0 enabled means these machines have capability to communicate with the other surrounding machine or the machine through information technology or through internet. So this kind of system, if we want to design an industry which works like this, then also we are able to assemble the workstation, these automobiles. But in this, it is not fully flexible. It is fully flexible. Fully flexible means different designs of the cars, different models of the same car, they can be assembled on the same set of system without altering or without going for designing of new assembly line. So that's the kind of concept we are talking today, which is said to be the Industry 4.0. Okay, then there are 6 design principles about smart manufacturing. One is called interoperability. So what is the meaning of interoperability? The ability of cyber physical system, that is the workpiece carriers, assembly stations and products, humans and smart factories to connect and communicate with each other via IoT and iOS. So via Internet of Things or Internet of Services. So there will be a perfect, communication among each, entities which are physically connected. So that's what is called interoperability. Then we have virtualization. Now virtualization means a virtual copy of the smart factory. Like nowadays we are having the concept of digital twin. The concept of digital twin which we are having is about virtualization. So virtual copy of the smart factory, which is created by linking sensor data with virtual plant models and simulation models. So we can have, say, pure virtual models. We can even have augmented reality models. Then we have decentralization. So this decentralization is about the ability of cyber physical system within the smart factories to make decisions of their own. So we can have vertical integration, vertical decentralization, vertical integration, and similarly we can have horizontal integration or decentralization, those kinds of things. Then real-time capability. Now this real-time capability is something which is very interesting and which is not so new. We already have systems. The concept of adaptive control is already in place. So the meaning of adaptive control is that this is a real-time capability to keep on accessing the data and then using this data to control the machines and take the appropriate decisions. The capability to collect and analyze the data and provide insights immediately. So it's a kind of adaptive control. Then we have service orientation. So offering services of cyber physical systems, humans and smart factories via Internet of Services, and modularity. So modularity, there will be different modules, like if I am having a very fully flexible machine, maybe continuous line, then there may be some modules also which can be interchanged. So flexibility, adaptation of smart factories for changing requirements of individual modules. So these are the 6 design principles of Industry 4.0. So if you try to see the building blocks of Industry 4.0, we are having different technologies actually, which builds the smart manufacturing concept. So these start from the, say, big data analytics. We have augmented reality. We have autonomous robotics. We need to do simulations. There may be horizontal and vertical system integration. Industrial IoT. So now in BIT Jhansi also we are getting this IoT lab developed. Now this whole thing is actually done in the beginning with in a very soft environment, because you will have the CAD model of the component to be manufactured, which is to be communicated to this along with the various algorithms which will find out the appropriate information from the huge chunk of data, and then this is to be communicated, and accordingly the machines will operate. So because this entire information keeps moving via internet, so there has to be a lot of cyber security, because otherwise there may be a problem. And then in the environment of Industry 4.0, what has been recommended is the additive manufacturing, which is the manufacturing tool. Though I feel that I do not know whether really this is very justifiable or not, because in these additive manufacturing is something which is quite suitable if you have, that is very beneficial if you want to have customized components made. But if you have to do probably the mass production, repeatedly you have to make the same component for maybe 1,000 times every day. I believe that mass production or the rigid automation, which we get as hard automation, that is the most appropriate automation for that concept. So so this is how this concept of smart manufacturing along with the additive manufacturing is connected. Okay, then so today the concept is that we are going to have a complete digital enterprise. So what my message to all of you is that when you are teaching your students, maybe in a college like BIET or maybe any other engineering institution in the country, the concept of digital enterprise must be explained to our students in a very nice manner. Because in the time, the various startups, the various incubations which students are supposed to do in the time to come, that they have to start with the digital systems. There may be scarcity of space, there may be scarcity of the facilities in the beginning. So if they start their things with a very digital manner in the beginning, in a very small room, they can initiate their startup, and then they can build up their startup, and finally there may be a point from where those virtual things will start converting to the real things, that is the kind of enterprise which we talk about is called as the digital enterprise. So here the entire value chain is digitized and integrated. So you can see on this slide I have written various things, like it starts from the product design, production planning, production engineering, then we have production. So once you start doing production, then your digital thing starts converting into the real things, and then basically you have to offer various services. So you have to have the life cycle and data driven services, and obviously from the digital world there's a very smooth transition with the minimum physical requirements. You can have the product launched to the real world. So what we have today is that the top 10 skill sets that are relevant for smart manufacturing. So here, if you really see the today's way of teaching our engineering students, we focus on complex problem solving ability. Like if you really see the examinations like JEE advanced examinations, the kind of question paper students are given, kind of questions they are solving, there's a judgment on their ability for the complex problem solving. Then coordinating with others. You all know that in any industry, this is the prime need, that the teamwork is something which is very important. People management, you all know it is the most critical sector actually in any industry or in any institution. Managing people is the most critical thing. Then negotiation, quality control, obviously you all understand these terms. Service orientation, judgment and decision making, active listening and understanding the other's view, and then adapting the things for your own product or company. And obviously the creativity, because creativity is something which is lagging. Now today we are facing a lot of problem in our institutions as far as the employability of our students are concerned. So these are some important points where we have to focus, correct? So in the today's skill, if we are able to focus or impart knowledge in the domain of specified engineering, maybe which we call as a branch of engineering, along with the general graduate subjects that makes a general background of the student. So we have to see that these things are taken care. So in order to improve the employability of our students. Now, if we talk about the concept of smart manufacturing, correct? So this concept of smart manufacturing means we are talking about the skills which are required. Now, if you compare the two sides, like if you try to see the left side on your screen now, so there are few points which are different. Now, what are those few points? These few points are, one is the emotional intelligence, point number 6, and the last point, that is the cognitive flexibility. So these are the another set of skills which are required if you want to work in a highly networked and complex manufacturing industry, which is called as a smart manufacturing system. Now, the figure has also been shown on the bottom. You can see the kind of system which we are talking now. So here we have this. Why emotional intelligence is required? Because when you are working in such an environment, which is it is completely manless environment, hardly you will have people, with whom you can talk, correct? So emotional intelligence. Then the second thing is the cognitive flexibility. So why this is required? Because you are working in this kind of highly networked environment. So you need to have cognitive flexibility, because you have to, the person should be such that he should be able to change over from one kind of job to another kind of job immediately. So cognitive loads, you can Google what is the meaning of cognitive loads, and you can understand that what exactly I mean for cognitive flexibility. Okay, so if we try to see the impact of such an manufacturing philosophy to any organization, so what do we see? That this kind of philosophy will impact the individual. Obviously, it will impact the business, society, economy of any country, and of course national economy of a country, and then finally the economy of the globe. So this particular philosophy of Industry 4.0 is likely to affect the entire globe in one go. So what is the conclusion here? The conclusion here is that Industry 4.0 is not a machine. Smart manufacturing is not a machine. It is a manufacturing system. It is a manufacturing philosophy, correct? Where you are going to have amalgamation or assimilation of so many technologies which have been shown in this particular slide, which are known as building blocks of Industry 4.0. And when you utilize all these technologies in order to produce certain product in a very digital manner, and you have a very smooth transition from digital world to real world, we call that factory to be a smart manufacturing factory. And we have only few such systems, factories which have been developed maybe in Germany and maybe in the US. So some people call it Industry 4, some people call it smart manufacturing, but this is what is the concept. Now I have some time left, so now I'll talk about this smart additive manufacturing. So let me talk about additive manufacturing. Okay. So the concept of additive manufacturing is actually something which is not so old, I'll say, but definitely this concept is something which is around 25 years old, because the first additive manufacturing system, which in the beginning it was called as rapid prototyping, so that was developed in 1996. The information which comes to us is that this is the system which has come there. Now in the beginning it is the product design cycle, and in the beginning you can see that the design starts with the design need, and we do the literature survey, we collect the relevant designs, try to do CAD processes. And nowadays in industries we conceptualize the design, and we try to do the design modeling and simulation, and finally we optimize the design, and then the design is to be evaluated. So in the beginning, when this concept of rapid prototyping was developed, it was a product design tool. So this product design tool is something which is used to make a prototype and then to evaluate the design, and then blueprints were prepared. If the design is found okay, then we do process engineering and we do the production, quality control, packaging, shipping, and then the product comes to the market. So here, if you try to count the time, like when you start defining the need of a product and when you end up, the product is launched into the market. So this time is called product lead time. This product lead time is something which is very important one, and this is very important because smaller is the lead time. In a very small, in that time you are able to launch the product in the market. And as far as the business is concerned, if you are among first few who are launching a new product in the market, you will be the maximum profit maker. So in case you are you are not making, you are like, mobile is coming into the market, correct? In the very beginning, like around 2000 or so, when, or maybe 1996-7, when the mobile was introduced in our country, those companies who brought the mobile first, like Usha phone kind of things, they made the maximum profit. And today you can see the kind of competition we are having in the market, correct? So the first few who bring the concept in the market, the product in the market, they are the maximum profit maker. Later on, there's a lot of competition, correct? So that's why the manufacturing lead time becomes a very important factor. It becomes a very important factor because if your manufacturing lead time is quite long, then you will find that you are unable to launch the product early, and you will lose the profit. So that's why what happens is that the concept of rapid prototyping actually came into the picture. So this prototype or model making is one of the important steps to finalize the product design. It helps in conceptualization of a design before the start of full production. A prototype is usually fabricated and tested. So earlier, what used to happen, that this particular concept was used to be there in the hands of very skilled technicians, correct? So these skilled technicians used to, do this job. They in the I'll say in the supervision of maybe senior engineers. But these people used to be very less in number because they were skilled. There was some sort of art in their hands, and less science, more art. So they used to take a lot of time, and it was the age-old practice for many centuries. So in order to cut down this prototyping time, what people did, they thought that why not to have soft prototyping. So soft prototyping means, if you want to do virtual prototyping, then you need to have a software, a particular software in a particular domain which is related to a product, and you have to actually model the product there, and you have to apply the required loads, which may be thermal loads, which may be mechanical loads, and then you are going to run the algorithm, and you are going to see that what are the results which are being obtained. So what you will appreciate, that though it is a good technique and still people use sometimes, but because these numerical models, the softwares are based on the numerical models, and these numerical models are actually based on certain assumptions. So the predictions which you get, they are actually away from the real predictions, correct? So that's why what happens is that you are unable to get the very nice results. So that's the limitation of virtual prototyping. So people were always looking that there may be a way that we can make the prototype in a very fast manner. So with the advent or with the development of CAD/CAM technologies, automation technologies, PLCs, correct, and mechatronics, I'll say, this concept of rapid prototyping, where a prototype is developed by layer material deposition, that started during early 1980s. People started making attempts that why not to use all these things together, and we can create the component by depositing the material, and that's how people started thinking about it. And the first patent appeared around 1994 or so. That is for stereolithography process, which is the first one in 3D printing. So the concept is very simple to understand, that you can have a product if you want to make. You can remove the material, you all know, that is known as machining. You can join the two blocks, which is known as welding or joining, or you can have a metal block or metal blank which can be compressed in a die, and you can form the material by plastic deformation. And the other way maybe that is a bottom-up approach, that you can have material added layer by layer, and you can create the component. So that's what is the concept of rapid prototyping, and today we are calling it as 3D printing. So here, basically, we start with the computer-aided design data. Now, this is a completely digital concept. So we start with the CAD modeling of the component, and then we do tessellation. So the CAD model, which is a .prt file, that is being tessellated, and then we intersect the horizontal planes to this CAD model, and we get basically slices, which is a layered model, and this layered model is being fed to a 3D printer, which may be an additive manufacturing system, you can call it. So then there will be some intermediate step depending upon the kind of technology you are having. So that is, again, there is a computation that how to move the laser spot, or how to move the nozzle, or how to expose the entire layer with the particular kind of energy, so that you are able to get the deposition, and then you are basically having this data fed to the system, and you are actually achieving the layer by layer material deposition. You are getting the product, and then this prototype which you get, sometimes that required to be post-processed. So post-processing may include steps like post-curing. It may include steps like doing the things, means removing the support structures, improving the surface quality, and so on. So this prototype is then tested, and if it is found okay, it is being considered fine. Otherwise, you go and change your engineering design, and you redo the things. So in a short time, basically, like if you want to produce a component like this, you can do the tessellation. So this is the concept of tessellation we have, and in the concept of tessellation, like there's a surface, and this surface is being this is a NURBS, say for example, non-uniform rational B-spline surface patch. So which is being divided piecewise into small triangles, and that's how you have to preserve the intent of the design. So you just go through with this, and we do this, and then there's an intersection problem that when you slice, basically you intersect the horizontal plane with the STL file, so you get the slicing done, and they are written in a specified formats like SLC or CLI formats, and then you actually do the deposition. So when you do the deposition, you have various technologies, that is liquid-based technologies or powder-based technologies or solid-based technologies, and after deposition, basically you do the post-processing, that is the post-curing, and that is the removal of support structure, finishing by sanding, polishing, or painting. So in a short time, basically you have the CAD model, and you can get the physical prototype in your hand maybe in few hours of time. So that's why we call this to be a rapid prototyping. So like this rapid prototyping has, number of names, number of titles came for this technology. I'll tell you in my next slide. So the different data set which can be used to drive this 3D printing nowadays is the CAD. So you make the STL, then you have 2D, you make 3D CAD, you make STL, make the part. The other two are very interesting applications. Once again, like we can have a point cloud data, like if I am having an old object, an old machine component, or a old monument. So for example, I have got an idol, which is an old idol. So we take that old idol and do the reverse engineering, and then we do the 3D CAD, we make, and we can make a STL file. And the another one is the biomedical application, on which I have contributed a lot now. So we start with the MRI or CT scan data, and there are some softwares using which we can create the STL file, and we can produce the component. So we can print the component. So this is how we go ahead. So I have already told you this in the beginning, that introduction of this rapid prototyping into a business correct? When you are actually doing the product development process, if you introduced this rapid prototyping, you are able to compress the product lead time a lot. Like in certain projects, people have established that up to 90% reduction in the product lead time that has been achieved, and that's why this is also known as time compression engineering or simultaneous engineering, where we are able to reduce the product lead time drastically with the help of rapid prototyping as a product design tool. Now, if you want to see the classification, we have a solid, like different titles came for this technology. People called this rapid prototyping in the beginning, then generative manufacturing, layered manufacturing, solid freeform fabrication, correct? People have called it rapid manufacturing, and after that 3D printing, and today 3D printing and additive manufacturing. These are the two very important terms which are widely used by the various people around, engineers, even the medical practitioners or doctors. They are calling it 3D printing because we are able to get the things done. So here the material, the classification of these AM processes is based on the starting material, that is solid, paste, solid or liquid, we can say, because other gaseous and paste, they are just, hypothetical, or we can say they are at laboratory level only. So if we are in the beginning, it was the liquid which was used. So the first process which was developed was stereolithography. So we did with the stereolithography, and the concept of stereolithography was based on the light of one frequency. And then we also have solid ground curing. We have thermal based polymerization or holographic concept. But if we are having solid, the solid can be in the form of wire, in the form of powder, maybe one powder or more than one powder at one time, and also foil. So we have different processes like FDM process, binding, 3D printing binder process, selective laser melting process. So many processes are there which you will be learning the things over the time. So Pandeyji, I have some more time, or maybe. So in short, I can brief a few processes now. So
actually you may take.
Okay, so like this is the concept of stereolithography, which was the first process which was developed in 1994. The patent was filed. So here the idea here is that we have basically the we have the photosensitive resin or photocurable resin. So what happens is that the photosensitive resin, it is a monomer actually that is being poured on this platform, and equal to one layer thickness in the beginning. It's a very high viscous liquid that spreads and forms a layer, fine layer of, say, for example, 100 microns, and then there's a laser from the top that comes down by having the reflection through this movable mirror, and this movable mirror is actually numerically controlled so that this point is deflected on the surface of the this liquid, and you are able to actually cure so wherever this laser spot goes, below which there's a polymerization reaction, and you are able to harden the material that starts that gets converted from liquid to solid, and you are able to deposit the layer. Once you are able to done with one layer, the platform goes down and you are able to deposit a second layer, third layer, keeps. So here you have to plan the support structure. So because you have to plan the support structure because if there's any overhanging feature, you need to deposit. You have to plan for the support structure. Otherwise, you won't be able to deposit it. Similarly, you have another. So this particular process, stereolithography process, has the best things. Advantages are that its resolution is very good. You can deposit very fine layers, like you can deposit layers as 10 micrometers fine. So that's called microstereolithography. Very fine layers with fine surface quality and accuracy one can produce, but only limitation, and the limitation is a quite major limitation, because the number of polymer liquids or the monomer liquids which are available, they are very, very limited in the number. So that restricts the use of this technology. So we have another one, that is where we use powder. The powder may be plastic powder, it may be metal powder also. So if it is a plastic powder, we call SLS, sintering. If it is a metal powder, we call it SLM. Sometimes we also call it as DMLS, direct metal laser sintering. So here, the powder is spread by these rollers or recorders, and this is very fine layer, around say 150 to 200 microns, and then you are having the laser. This mirror deflects the beam spot on this thing, and you are able to actually, these powders, they get fused through their periphery, and they just form a solid lump, and you get basically these things done. So here is another slide which explains it in a better manner. So this entire thing is conducted in a closed chamber, and you are actually increasing the temperature of this entire thing below few degrees Celsius melting point of the material, and the laser spots actually increase the temperature by a few degrees Celsius, and then you powder spread by recorder you do, then you try to powder bed exposed to the laser beam, and then the platform moves down, and then you are able to record the next layer. So that's how you are able to do this. And then FDM, everybody, I think you might have seen this process, most economical. So the better thing about this process is that it is very versatile in terms of materials, because you are having powder, and you can deposit the powder, and you have so different kinds of powders we are able to deposit them. The strength is pretty good. Definitely the accuracy is good. Surface quality is reasonably good. So, but definitely not as good as the stereolithography. The fused deposition modeling is something which is important one. The most, I'll say, economical and most simple, and you are able to deposit the material from a spool of wire, and there's a nozzle which is drawing this wire in, and some molten liquid that comes out, and with the XY control, you're able to deposit the material. And then we are having basically, this is the most modern, I'll say, concept, which is called powder blown technology. So it is a metal 3D printing, which is also sometimes called direct energy deposition process. So here, basically the powder comes down like this through this conical channel, and the laser comes from the center. The interaction on this focal plane, it is being melted, and using this XY control, you are able to deposit the material. So you can see the kind of components which have been fabricated by this technique. So this is the most advanced system. We have today different versions of this system. So we have processes like direct metal deposition, laser metal deposition, electron beam additive manufacturing, correct? And we also have processes like wire arc additive manufacturing. So these are the processes which we have, which can do this thing for you. So let me show you some video now, one video which will demonstrate this process a lot. So you can see this, how the DED process works. थोड़ा गरम कर दो। Okay, so this is how this process is. Well, afterwards, I'll tell you another important process, which is called wire arc additive manufacturing, maybe. So let me show that to you. Yeah, then it is the electron beam additive manufacturing. So electron beam additive manufacturing is another important process, where instead of having this laser, we have this powder bed system only, and instead of using laser, we are using a vacuum here, and we are using a high kilowatt, 300 kilowatt electron beam, and this beam melts each layer of powder in desired geometry, and we get excellent mechanical properties or material properties in this particular process. There is another variant of this EBM process, where instead of using this powder bed, we use a wire feeder, and we are having electron beam. Correct? So they have different, applications. You can see this very, very important process to do that. Then WAM, wire arc electron additive manufacturing. So here you are actually using the welding process. Okay, so you can see another video here, which can okay. So this is how the wall looks like. You can appreciate the kind of surface quality we can have, and we have residual stresses, distortions, and sometimes we need shielding gases if you are using highly reactive materials. The resolution is low, but here we have a near net shape manufacturing, and we also have good structural integrity, and low to medium complexity components can be produced. So these are some components which have been done by WAM. Okay, then we have this multi-jet fusion technology additive manufacturing method by HP. So it's a new technology, maybe a few years old. So here actually we are using fusing agent and detailing agent, two kinds of polymeric, two kinds of chemicals to make the boundary and the layer material, and in one go in one go actually we are exposing. So here you can see from one nozzle we apply the detailing agent and then other agent and fusing agent, and afterwards in one go the entire layer is being exposed by this UV light and it is being cured. So we can make flexible components as well as the quite strong components of polyamide by this process. So you can see these are the components of this process. Then I'll tell one more process to you that is called digital light processing. So this is the concept of digital light processing. You can just have a look on this video. Yeah. So
DOP printers use a light projector, similar to what you would find in a movie theater, to project the image of an entire layer simultaneously, regardless of the number of parts. Because they cure a full layer in a single flash, DOP printers can be outstandingly fast. They are also very reliable, with low complexity and no movement.
okay, so here you can see that this is the concept. Like in SLA, the spot moves, but here in one go, this is a kind of, we have a screen which is a pixel based. So a layer geometry is being created transparent and other portion is opaque, and in one go you are actually exposing the entire liquid. This is a monomer liquid and it is being solidified. So it may be faster process if you have larger cross-sectional areas. Okay, then this is the last process which I am going to tell you today. It's a 2-photon polymerization 3D printing. So it is for nano level resolution it has. So here what we do, again, there's a polymer that's photopolymer, but here the laser is a conical laser. We do not give the laser like a parallel beams. So what happens is the intensity rises like this in this zone. So this forms a voxel. Voxel means it is a solidified volume. So it's as small as 100 nanometers. So that's how its resolution becomes very high. It's a high resolution process complementary to 2-photon microscopy. Online process observation is there. Polymerization is the presence of biology. Now, because this 100 nanometer size is a very small size, this size is smaller, much smaller than the size of biological tissues and cells. So in the presence of these biological tissues and cells, one can do the process. But you need biocompatible initiators, reactive water-based systems, and monomers with low toxicity. So we have a variety of applications in the different domains of engineering for this process. Like here I have shown some components, micro components which have been produced by TPP. So these are micro prisms for micro optics. This is a micro lens. You can see the dimension. It's a 60 micrometers. It's a 23 micrometer. And you can see here it's 100 micro. How many micrometers it is? It is 100 micrometers this size. So you can see the kind of scaffold geometry we can have, and the kind of things we are able to deposit. These are the micro needles for micro drug delivery. So sizes you can appreciate, correct? This is the kind of 3D printing or additive manufacturing systems we have today, commercial systems available. So I think I must stop here with this background. I believe that this is enough for you for today. And if you have any other question for me, you can discuss with me. Yeah. Yes, Pandey. Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so I am done with the lecture. So if these guys have some questions, they can ask. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for a presentation. Participants, if you have any questions or queries, sir will be addressing your questions accordingly. In spite of his health issues, he just gave his lecture delivery. We are very grateful to him. Thank you, sir, for coming and giving his lecture. Recently, he got operated. So,
okay.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yes, Shivali ji.
No questions, sir. Just to say thank you, sir.
Yeah, thanks a lot. And so I must go online, offline now. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Next session we'll be having at 11:45. I think we are having an extended break now. Okay, thank you all for joining.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Please join within the